Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Blessed Girl Summer Podcast where we live, love, and grow. And so I'm so excited to continue our learning journey as we're going through this life and just navigating the different spaces. We are still on our series about soul and self-care, and I'm super excited that today I have a special guest with me. Ariel Roberts. Welcome, welcome, welcome. She is a clinical therapist and an expat coach. And I'm so excited to have her joining us today and coming and sharing some of her expertise as well as her experience. Ariel, welcome. I'd love for you to introduce yourself to everyone.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a blessing, such an honor being here. As you said, my name is Ariel. I am a licensed clinical mental health therapist and an expat coach. So I help motivate and empower ambitious women to move out of their home country. A lot of people out there are wanting to make moves to different countries, and so I really help support them in that journey. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Now, let me get it right. Ariel.
Ariel, yes.
Ariel, okay. But I love what you do. I'm definitely on my bucket list. I think I've shared this with you before. I want to live half of the year out of the country and then half of the year in the States. I'm working towards it. So at some point, I will be reaching
Well,
out to you to help build that confidence to be able to do that and just even the knowledge to be able to do that as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Got you. When you're ready, I'm here.
Listen, I'm ready in my mind. Like, it's all the other things. Um,
Right.
so I'd love for you to, because I'm sure our listeners will be a little bit curious as to what brought you to that decision to move out of the States and what that experience has been like for you in terms of wellness.
Oof. Well, okay, we'll start, I guess, with my motivation. I was a single mom for the first basically 6 years of my son's life. He's now 9. Oh my goodness. Maybe the first 5 years of his life. Dates and I don't go well. Um, but he all of a sudden was allowed to spend time away from me with his biological father, and his dad and I lived in different states. And during these times he would get my son for like a week at a time. And I told myself, instead of being home and sulking like I knew I probably would, I was going to travel. I was going to put my mind to something that I always really wanted to do and go out and explore the world. And so I did that. And I began traveling in, I believe in 2018, I went on kind of like a mission trip with my master's degree to Jamaica. Absolutely loved it. It was so beautiful and really helped put things into perspective, recognizing that there are other things and other cultures in the world that love and appreciate things in a manner that Americans don't. And from there on, I
Mm.
began to solo travel. I went off to Barcelona in 2019 and I fell in love. I came home from that trip and I told my parents, I'm moving to Spain. And they were like, oh, here we go again. Because they know me. They know when I put my mind to something, I'm doing it and there's no stopping me. They have no other option but to support me. And so they did. And I continued traveling throughout that year, and I was planning to make a move after I graduated from my master's program in 2020. And then COVID happened. So it kind of messed up all of my plans. And long story short, I ended up rekindling slash getting into a relationship with my now husband. And fast forward to now, we're now living in Valencia, Spain, loving our life. It's been the best thing for me. I've become bilingual. My son is almost trilingual. He's now learning the native tongue, the native language of Valencia, which is Valenciano. my personal growth and development has expanded in ways that I can't even explain. I would have had no idea that it even could have, I think, had I stayed in the United States. So,
Wow. I feel like I know today we're talking about self-care and soul care, but like what was the experience? Like what, because you were saying like living differently. There are other ways that you can live outside of the way people live in the United States. Can you like just share a little bit for those of us who, like me, I've never been to Spain. I've like, have I been out of the United? If Dominican Republic counts, then I've been out of the
counts.
country. But can you just talk a little bit about like what those differences are?
Yeah. My favorite is that I feel as though in Spain, people, I always get this wrong. Let me think of it in my head first. People work, live to work instead of working to live.
Live to work instead of working, right, working to
To live.
live.
Yep, exactly.
Right,
So
right.
there's just so much more to life. They here in Spain, so I when I went to Barcelona in August, I was walking along the streets and I kept seeing these stores that were closed. And so, I'm from Michigan, so like I'm thinking Detroit, walking around, and I always see these kind of bordered up, stores where they've gone out of business, so they pull down the like really the shaded things to the stores, and there's usually graffiti and everything on it, and the store is just out of business, like it doesn't open. So I kept seeing those along the streets of Spain, and I was thinking to myself, wow, there's a lot of businesses that are out of business. I'm wondering kind of what's going
Right.
on. And so I was actually, I think I was walking around with a couple of people who I'd met in my hostel, and I mentioned that out loud, wow, there's so many stores that are closed or businesses that are out of business. And they were like, no, it's just August. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? And they were like, well, in the month of August, pretty much the entire country of Spain shuts down. Everyone takes 3 to 4 weeks off of work, and they go and they travel and spend time with their loved ones and their family, and they shut down their stores. And so me, an American, I'm sitting here like, well, how are they making money during this
I'm
month?
this right.
And their thing is, it's they don't, not that they don't care, but their priorities are so set in stone where it's not all about money. It's not all about how do I make the most and gain the most. They really take that time to just nourish their relationships with loved ones and travel and visit and do fun things. So and it really is the whole country of Spain. They take these 3 to 4 weeks off, and you know depending on where you work, you still get paid for those weeks. So people are taking time off and
Wow.
yeah, still getting paid.
Yeah, maybe I need to reconsider because I was thinking Costa Rica or Belize, but maybe I need to think about Spain. But I love that. I love that the focus culturally, the focus is more on living and like living
Mhm.
well. Whereas like here in the States, it is so much of a focus on like what is next? What can you
Exactly.
accomplish? What aren't you doing? What do you still have
Exactly.
to do? Like what level are you on and how can you get to the next one? And so I absolutely love that. And I feel like that rolls right into our conversation for today because um, I feel like for everyone that I've kind of talked to that understands the importance of self-care and soul care or is intentional about their time and about their wellness, they've all at some point experienced something that has made them be like, wait a minute, I have to make some adjustments. I have to make some changes. This is not, what I want for myself. And I think us living in the States, we definitely um, you could just most of the people that you meet are going to have encountered something. And so I'd love for you to share with us maybe an experience or a time that you had that was pretty defining for you in terms of your mental health and your wellness. And and making sure that you're protecting that space and being intentional about taking care of yourself.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll give you a little bit of backstory. But so when I became pregnant with my son, it was unexpected and I was not with his father. And we ended up having a really different relationship. It was a honestly, it was a pretty traumatic relationship for me. And so I kind of went throughout my pregnancy and the first couple years of my son's life just kind of on robot mode. And I remember I was working in a school, and one of my closest friends at the time, I was telling her just some of the things that I had experienced with my son's father. And she kind of looked at me with this weird look and she was like, Ariel, that sounds really traumatic. Have you ever thought about getting therapy? And I was like, no, it's just life. Things like this happen. It's about my turn because I've had a really great life up until this moment. So it's about time that, something happened to me or whatever. And so that was the first time where I was kind of like, maybe I could pay a little bit more attention to myself, but still at that point I wasn't quite there. And so I kind of kept going. And I ended up starting my master's degree and I was reading a case study about a man who really did not process his feelings and emotions very well. And they were giving all these specific examples of how he would go about. He would use humor. He would downplay things or experiences that he went through, and etc. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, this isn't normal. Like, because this is how I am with my feelings and emotions.
Right.
And so in that moment, I kind of self-diagnosed myself and
Mm-hmm.
realized that maybe I should go on and get some help. And so I went back to my friend and I asked her for any recommendations for a therapist. I was in my master's degree, but wasn't quite yet there where I was practicing or knew many people in the field. And so there was a service that allowed me to get 6 free therapy sessions. And so I went. It was a really great experience, but I went and I told her everything. And I was like, okay, at the end of the 6 sessions, I was like, I'm done. I'm good to go. I'm all healed.
We wish, right?
We would. Lo and behold, that was not the truth because a few years later, actually in preparation for my move abroad, which I think speaks to just how recent this moment really was for me, but I was I was prepared or preparing to take my son's father to court so we could get permission to come to Spain. We originally agreed on something and then minds were changed or whatever, but I'd already put so much work into it. I wasn't willing to give up my dream. So I said, we're going to take this to court and, God willing, we get approved, we'll be able to go. And if not, then that's okay. And we'll figure things out here. And I was going through a really, really, really hard time. I was super anxious, high stress, not paying attention to myself. And it's funny that you asked this question because I've been thinking about exposing myself to the world with this situation because it's kind of embarrassing to talk about, but at the same time too, I think it's important that people realize that one, we're all human, and two, sometimes our body will speak to
Mm-hmm.
us in ways that will wake us up. And it doesn't matter how embarrassing, it doesn't matter how they it has to do it, but your body is going to make you pay attention if you don't listen to all of the signs beforehand. So in preparation for this court date, I was, like I said, experiencing lots of high stress and anxiety. And I remember sleeping one night and I woke up to a wet bed. And so I remember, turning to my son and I was just like, oh my gosh, I thought we were past this stage. So I went to go move him and I realized that he was dry. So the wetness was me. So I was,
Mm-hmm.
mid late 20s and I'm just thinking, oh my goodness, what in the world is happening here? And the next day, or I cleaned everything up or whatever and couldn't go back to sleep because I was like, what in the world is happening? And so the next day I ended up calling my best friend and I was telling her about what happened and just how crazy it was, and I wasn't really sure what was going on with me. I think I need to go to the doctor or something. And she asked me, do you remember your thoughts? Do you remember what were you dreaming? Do you remember what was going on? And I, to this day, remember this dream like it was yesterday. And I was like, yeah, actually. So I was in in my bathroom, I was trying to use the bathroom, and my son, in this dream, my son and his friend, they were talking to me, asking me for help with their homework. And simultaneously, we had this boxer mix, and he was this huge needy dog, and so he was trying to get on my lap as well. And I remember trying to turn the water off in the bathtub because I was running it and I wanted to jump in after I, used the bathroom. And as I was reaching for it, it would just keep getting further and further from me. So I couldn't turn the water off. And, so I'm sitting there, my son and his friend are there, the dog's on top of me. I look out of the bathroom doors. There was one door to my bedroom, there's one door to the hallway slash my son's room. And I remember just seeing a mess. There were just toys and paper and clothes all over. And then the final moment of the dream, someone rang the doorbell. And I just remember feeling like, I cannot do this anymore. And
Hmm.
I'm telling my friend this, and she's like, well, Ariel, like your dream was telling you that you're anxious and you're not putting yourself first, you're not prioritizing things, you're doing too much, and you're not listening to yourself, you're not taking that time and space. And she told me, Ariel, one of the things that I love absolutely most about you is your unconditional heart. You love everyone unconditionally and you give everyone everything that you have. And she said, it's one of your greatest strengths, but at the same time, it's also one of your greatest weaknesses because you do so much for others and you don't do the same for you. You don't put yourself first. You don't prioritize yourself. And she told me, like, she was really worried because if I didn't learn to turn inward, to be mindful and aware and listen to my body when it's trying to speak to me, I'm going to burn out. And it was a really
Hmm.
surreal moment for me because I realized I had to get it together. And I immediately got into mindfulness and meditations and therapy and just really learning to kind of turn inward and start to listen to myself so that I didn't miss any more of those signs.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for sharing that story with us. I hear so many things in that story, but just to share a couple, that piece of not being in touch with how you're feeling and what is going on because you're just doing things and feeling like that is normal, like not knowing another way to live. And I mean, as I'm in school as well, I'm like, oh my gosh, watching, reading these case studies, and I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, so wait a minute, cousin Bobo and, Auntie TT or whatever, myself, I'm
Yeah.
seeing all kinds of people. Um, but just not even realizing um how we're living and what we've been taught to do and conditioned to do, based on our lived experience, but also the part about our body talking to us and us ignoring our body. Sometimes I feel like there's so much going on that we might not have the intention to ignore it, but we may not even really hear it because the noise around us is so loud. I know for me, I can definitely relate to the stress of child visitation, child custody, like all of those things, navigating that space and trying to find agreement with the pressure of being a single parent, as well as, trying to do what's best for the child and trying to co-parent and all of these different things. Um, and how much it weighs on us as individuals. And sometimes we feel like we have to have all the answers and we have to like do it right and we should be able to do all these things. And so as you were talking about that dream, you're like the water's running and you're trying to turn off the water, but the water's getting further away. It's like I can't never catch up, right? And it's just like pouring. Because when I think of like water running, a faucet. Like I just think it's just continuously flowing. And then for it to keep moving further and further away, that to me would kind of just produce something like, I'm never going to get, like, this is never going to end. Right. And then I think the weight of, okay, my son is on my lap, the dog is on my lap, like the weight of all the responsibilities that, you're taking on. And then the mess, right? I can relate to the mess, girl.
Like,
The
oh my
mess
God,
is
I
just
just,
like,
yes.
yeah. And so I think that that dream was such a good depiction of like what was internally happening, like what you were feeling. I'm so glad you had someone to bring that to your attention. Sometimes we also have to have that physical experience to make us look at it, right?
Exactly.
My back
Mm.
went out, and then about 4 years later, I ended up having to have back surgery at
Oh, wow.
26. See, I was walking around dragging my leg. I had a cane at 26 years old.
Oh,
And you know what? I didn't even associate it to stress like until years later. Um,
yeah.
but it was definitely, stress related, but it slowed me down
Yeah.
and I didn't have a
Exactly.
choice. Like I had to, yeah, yeah. So what was, if you don't mind me asking, what was that process like for you um to slow down and um begin to go inward?
That's actually a really, really good question because so very soon after that, I we ended up we ended up having court, and I remember talking with my lawyer, and my lawyer is like, it's going to be long and drawn out. It's going to be at least 3 to 4 hours, and we won't get the decision for a couple of weeks, so you really have to prepare yourself. And so I remember court was June 9th. The last day of school for my son was June 11th. He was leaving on June 12th to spend the summer with his dad. I had a one-way ticket to Spain June 14th, and then my lease was up June 15th. So there were all these things back to back to back. So I couldn't really still slow down in those moments because I had to go. And I really wasn't able to slow down until, well, I think so June 9th was the day of the court date, and actually we ended up getting the decision immediately, and the the court session only took 50 minutes. It was really quick. It was one of those just like glorious moments because, like I said, I was really
Yeah.
preparing for it to be really long and drawn out and whatever. And the judge was, able to kind of look at everything. He asked, I think really good, insightful questions, but he ended up granting it. And so that kind of allowed me to breathe a little bit, but I don't think I was really able to slow down until I made it to Spain. Um, just because life was, still going, which is, kind of interesting because now that you say that you had a physical disability that forced you to slow down, mine, obviously I think if I had to physically had to slow down, I probably would have. But mine, I was able to kind of keep going. But it brought me to this sense of awareness, and so I really started my mindfulness journey. I remember I downloaded this app called Insight Timer, and I had started practicing the meditations on there daily. Like I was scheduling in at least 15 minutes daily. If I could only slow down for 15 minutes a day, that was what I was going to do because it was all I had and I needed to do something. And I remember they give you streaks. So if you practice every single day, your streak increases. And I think I ended up having like 289-day streak or something with that eventually, and that became one of my biggest strategies to
Hmm.
learning to slow down and listen and turn inward. And I think what happened during that time is that I developed a relationship with myself in those 15 minutes a day, just taking the time to sit or you know push the thoughts out of my head and really turn inwards and ask what's going on within me and what can I do? Is there anything we can do? How can I make it better? How can I focus? And you know, that and journaling, honestly, those two combined were probably my saving grace at that moment because like I said, life wasn't slowing down as much, but if I could schedule that 15-minute time to just
Yeah.
meditate, journal, I mean, obviously it did wonders for me because it came around. So
No, I love that because the reality is some of our lives just can't stop, right? There are things, responsibilities, stuff that we have to do, commitments and obligations that we have. It is a process. Like the first part of that is awareness, and that awareness may take a minute to even fully understand, right? And so we have to give space to that. And then you saying there's an action that I'm going to take. It's just going to be small, but eventually that small action led to 289 days, you know? I would love to ask you. So, when people say meditation, like there's different types of meditation, but it sounds like yours was a lot more self-reflective. Can you share just a little bit about what specifically you were kind of asking yourself to bring yourself inward?
Yeah, well, I love that question. So at the beginning, I was really playing with getting to know the mindful meditative world. And I found myself bouncing between doing breathing exercises, guided imagery, or body scans. And I actually related most to body scans because what I ended up doing was noticing areas of my body where I held tension. And that was the first part of my journey, just bringing awareness. So there were a ton of different exercises where it would guide you, from scalp to toe, and it's pay attention to areas that feel tense, and can you let go? Can you relax a little bit more? Just a little bit more. And I noticed that, I hold tension in my jaws and in my cheeks. And I used to just bite my cheeks, probably during my sleep. And so I would have these rough patches in my cheeks. And so I remember after a couple of months, I stopped having that rough patch there. And I was like, oh my goodness, it's working. I'm not clenching and, biting my jaws or my cheeks anymore. And from there, I graduated. I never really was too big of a fan of breathing exercises, but then I went into guided imagery. And what I noticed with that is I would get a lot of spaces where I would create this mental image, this mental imaginative space for me where I could come back at any time. And so I would create these spaces. And what it did for me was allowed me to find a space. So, like, for example, Leaves on a Stream is one of my favorite mindful exercises where you basically just envision kind of being on the side of a river and you're watching leaves fall onto the river. And you take every thought that comes to your head and you put it on the leaf and you just let it float by. And so, what I ended up
I love that.
doing was so peaceful, I know. And so what I ended up doing was taking that and, becoming more aware of the thoughts that I was putting on the leaf, and sometimes the same thought would come up and come up and come up. And so what I would do is after that, I would reflect on some of those thoughts that I remembered and I kind of put to the side, well, this thought kept coming up and this thought kept coming up. And so that was a way for me to just connect with my inner self. And then from there, journaling just looked like having conversations with myself. And so I've always been a journaler. I remember being, super, super young, always having a journal on me. And I would always open up the first page and I would like introduce myself. Hi, journal. Like, I'm Ariel. I'm 7 years old and da 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 da. And I continue that to this day. Every journal that I start, I always have an introductory page where I'm introducing myself and where I am in life and etc. And so it really just became this like journal to myself where I was able to go and let go of judgments because I think it was the one place where I didn't have to worry about anyone judging me or taking what I said to heart, or I didn't have to worry about other people. It was just me and the paper. And I think it was a really powerful moment for me in that moment, realizing that has kind of always been my thing. And, now that I'm thinking, I think I stopped journaling in college because my college boyfriend read my diary, my journal. And so so I stopped for a few years, and I think that I had just gotten back into it when I began being mindful and practicing mindfulness. So I
Hmm.
think the power of the two together and just realizing how in tune I was with myself when I took the time to journal and put my thoughts on paper and not worry about judgments or other people's responses. That was really what did it for me.
Yeah, I love that. I love that process. I love how you were able to start at the river and the leaves and letting them go. And then when you were ready, then you were like, okay, well let's deal with this a little bit. Let's talk through this a little bit. And then doing that in a journaling space. I'm a journaler too. I've been doing it since I've been young, but I don't know, in the back of my mind, I'm like, and I don't do like the entry of like, hi, my name is such and such, but I definitely am like, okay, so this is what's been going on. Thank you for sharing that. That's an awesome technique. I'll definitely be sharing that with my future clients.
Yeah.
So
I I
one,
also
go ahead.
start I think I'm like making connections. I've started disposing of my journals since getting back into journaling. So
Mhm, mhm.
when I finish them, I'll burn them or throw them away or, do something symbolic to kind of get rid of, everything that it brought me. But
That's
yeah,
good. Yeah.
I also my husband speaks Spanish and only Spanish, so he's not reading my
Reading.
journals.
Oh
So
my gosh. I have so many. And sometimes I go back and I look at them. And I'm like, wow, I forgot about that. Like, I forgot,
Mhm.
first of all, I forgot I
Yeah.
went through that. I forgot, this happened. And so
Yeah.
sometimes I do that, but I do like the symbolization of, okay, I've released this thing. And so now I'm burning it because it's done, you know?
Mhm.
So I like that too. That's pretty cool.
Mhm.
So, one more question, and then of course, if there's anything that you'd like to add or share. Um, I always like to ask, or I've been asking in this series, what would a perfect soul retreat or oasis look like for you?
This is a great question. I think it changes in every season that I'm in. Um, but I think a perfect soul retreat for me would be connecting to nature. I'm a huge water person. I'm a water sign. I'm a Scorpio, so it makes sense. But connecting with nature, water, gardening, mountains, whatever it is, it doesn't have to just be water, but connecting with nature and just doing peaceful exercises. I love peaceful music. I love journaling. Um, I love being around just good energy people who aren't going to bring me down. We can have deep conversations. Um, I've been seeing, in retreats that they're doing, and this is so funny. If any of my college coaches are ever listening to this, they're going to be like, "Who in the world is this?" But I would actually, I think, enjoy doing like an ice bath or which
Oh,
is so crazy. But I remember
shock the
doing those.
system,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yes, I remember
wake you
doing
up.
those in university during like my athletic days, and I used to hate them. But now I feel like there's this symbolic, like you said, shock, this symbolic kind of, you know, bam, you're this new person. I would love to do something
Hmm.
like that. I guess that's also related to water. So,
Yeah.
water, mindfulness, meditation, maybe even something art related. It's been something that I've
Hmm.
been drawn to since I've been here. I've been wanting to join like a ceramics or pottery class. So doing something like that, just where I could anything I could do it and think. I love thinking. So if I could just be in my space, in my zone, thinking and doing something creative, something that I can express myself through, I think that would be ideal for me right now. I love that question.
Oh, I like that. I like your answers. Definitely that ice bath, it brings me to like an awakening, right? It's
Mhm.
like, woo, you're still here. about to do, right? Like a different level of energy. So that is interesting. Well, that's supposed to be
Mhm.
really good for like aging.
I said, not that you need anything to help you with aging.
Girl, that's gonna be another podcast. We're gonna have a pre-menopause series. talk about, talk about all the changes that's been taking place. Um, Yeah, but I thank you for sharing that. What I'm going to do now, really quickly, is just transition into there's a portion where I just like to give like a practical tip that the ladies can take and integrate into their daily living to what I call secure your peace, right? To find moments for you to be able to connect with yourself and just calm all the noise. um, this morning, I went to a swimming class. It was a water stretching type class. And as we got finished stretching and doing all those things, the instructor was like, okay, I want you guys to take these noodles and, or if you want to just float on your own, but take these noodles and I want you to spend the last 3 minutes of class just relaxing, relaxing and floating. So I'm like, okay, I'll get my little noodle. I get my noodle and I'm listening to the ladies around me. And one of the ladies says, I don't know how to relax. I'm not a good relaxer. Like, I've been trying, but I'm just not good at relaxing. And it just brought so many things to mind when she said that. Her struggle with being able to relax. It was an awesome experience to just be in the water and just be floating and just let the water move you. And I definitely want that for everyone. And I know that it is very difficult and challenging to find moments of relaxation and stillness, like to calm your mind and to calm your body. So, the tip for today, one of the suggestions that I do is coloring. I have a whole adult coloring book that for those of you who are watching, my little adult coloring book. Um, And oops, I do my different colorings. I get my favorite, I got a whole stack of markers that I like with my favorite colors. And, of course, all things that kind of make me feel good. And I have these different coloring books, and some of them are like, I have like a Boss Babes coloring book. I have like a nature coloring book. I have like a scripture coloring book. I have all these different types of coloring books based upon just like the mood that I'm in. But what it forces me to do is to get still and get quiet. And it just calms all the things that are going on in my mind. And so I wanted to offer that tip. Not everybody's a colorer. Not everybody wants to do that. But to your point, you mentioned like art therapy, right? Being in a space where you're bringing in like some colors and some creativity and the ability to just focus in on one thing, but it's not like a concentrated thought. Like you're not trying to figure something out or trying to like analyze anything. It could be messy. It could be clean lines. You could be creative with it. And I just feel like it's a forced relaxation for me. And I wanted to just encourage everybody today that back to the woman in the pool, it's something that you have to practice. It may not be something that comes naturally to you. It may not be something um, that you're used to doing. But as you begin to practice and institute these things that we've shared, it can become habit. Just like Ariel's, I think I've been saying your name wrong throughout this podcast, but just
You're
like
good.
Ariel's her ability to get to 289 meditations, right? As we are starting and as we give ourselves time, we can put it into practice. And so, hope that that helps somebody. Let us know if you've got your coloring book or something that you recommend as well. And Ariel, I thank you for joining us. I would love for you to share with everybody how they can stay in touch and get connected with you.
Yeah. On all social media platforms, I am the expat therapist. And if you want to go to my website, it is globaltransitions.co. Yeah, social media, the expat therapist, probably the best place to reach me on.
So definitely check her out. Um, and I gotta have you back on the podcast when I do another conversation about traveling and getting out of your comfort zone and going to visit different cultures and what that process and that journey looks like. But I thank you for joining us today. It's been a great conversation. I appreciate your vulnerability and just your willingness to share some of the real life encounters that we all have, and the choices that you chose, the choices that you've made as to how to navigate through those spaces. And so I thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was such an honor, such a joy.